to We Need to Name This, where we unpack the hidden curriculum of academe with scholars of color. I'm Laura Ann Jacobs. My co-host is
Harvey.
Yes. And today's episode is titled Academic Job Market Part 2, Postdoc or Nah. We would like to introduce an awesome woman of color scholar, Dr. Patricia Garcia, who will share her experiences with us. But first, we're going to share a little bit about her. Dr. Patricia Garcia is an assistant professor in the School of Information at the University of Michigan. She conducts interdisciplinary action research on the complex interplay between race, gender, and technology. Her current work focuses on broadening participation in computing by developing a culturally responsive and low-resource model for teaching computational thinking skills in informal learning environments, such as public libraries and community centers. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, do you want us to call you Pat, Dr. Garcia?
I think Pat is fine.
Okay. Thank you for joining us today, Pat.
Thank you for having me. So Pat, like something that we've been talking about even when we were just catching up is that after we graduate from graduate school and we've gotten our PhD, we have to think about, whether we want to go on the academic track, or maybe we want to leave academia, or maybe we want to do a postdoc. And postdoc was something I didn't know about even before I applied to getting a PhD. I figured you get your PhD, you become a professor. Like that's the one track that I knew about. And so we're really excited today for you to tell us a bit about being a postdoc, obtaining a postdoc and negotiating, because I think that's a track that folks don't even learn about until they're trying to apply to the job market and they're 4 or 6 years into their PhD. So our first question for you is, what is a postdoc? What is its purpose? And then how are postdocs different? Are postdocs all the same, or are there different postdocs depending on the institution?
Yeah, so I also thought you get your PhD and then you become a professor. And postdocs are actually really common in certain disciplines like the sciences. It's almost an expectation that people will do a postdoc. And so when I went on the job market, when I graduated, I actually had a job offer and then a postdoc offer. And, common wisdom would tell you, you accept the job offer because that's supposed to be the goal, is that it's a tenure track, position. Like that's supposedly the end goal for all, doctoral degrees for people who are pursuing an academic track. And one, I did not feel ready. I thought I need more time to really figure out who I am as a scholar and what kind of scholar I want to be. And two, I wasn't very excited about the job that I had gotten. And academia is so hard that I thought, if I don't love what I'm doing and love where I am, then I don't want to do this. And that was just something that I had decided for myself. And, not everyone will have that luxury. They might have, at the time I was, don't have children or none of those things. So I felt like I had that freedom to sort of say, it's either academia my way or it's not academia. I'll do something else. So I decided to take the postdoc and rejected the tenure track job. And so the question is, what is a postdoc? So for me, I think the postdoc can serve many purposes, but for me, the postdoc was an opportunity to, like I said, further explore what I wanted to do as an assistant professor, because like most people, when you finish your dissertation, you're kind of sick of seeing it and you kind of want to put it away, not look at it again for a while. And so at the time, I just felt like I want to change my trajectory a little bit. So part of it was just that, just intellectual, I want to change my trajectory. But then on the real, another reason was that I wanted to be more competitive on the job market. And I always knew I wanted to be at a research institution, and I just knew I didn't have enough publications. And I thought, okay, well, I'm obviously not ready to be an assistant professor. So I took the postdoc, and I think the postdoc is this transition in between being a doctoral student and an assistant professor, which to me was amazing. You get to focus, you get to you get more time to turn your dissertation into publications. You increase your network because you tend to meet people from another university. So yeah, so but they're actually really different. And this is one thing I tell people is there's the really amazing sort of like endowed postdocs, like either anything that's funded by NSF or any foundation. And those is like the money is given to you as a scholar, and then you can decide sort of what university you want to be at, and you're not really beholden to someone. There's also the kind where a faculty member has a grant, for example, and they need a postdoc, and for the purposes of the grant, they need to work on the grant project. Those are a little bit more, PI controlled. And so obviously the best case scenario is the ones where you're fully funded for yourself and you get to do what you want. And I did 2 postdocs, and my first postdoc was the kind where it was attached to a grant. And I learned a lot, especially about how to work within grants and with grants, because none of my advisors had grants. So that was like a whole other world to me. But I was feeling constrained. I thought I am growing. I'm learning a lot about grants. This is going to be awesome for when I want to fund my own research. But I really want to move in a different direction. And so it was supposed to be a 2-year postdoc. And midway through, I got offered to come to Michigan to do a postdoc here. And it was, had more intellectual freedom. And there was also this potential for transition into a faculty position, which the first postdoc did not have. So even though I did 2 postdocs, they were really sort of the length of, it was 2 years total. Okay. I feel like I've gone on for a while, so maybe I'll stop there.
So I wanted to follow up on a few things that you said, right? So you talked about a postdoc where when you came to Michigan, you were able to transfer into a different position, right? Or into a faculty position. And then there are postdocs where you don't transition to a faculty position. So can you tell us a little bit about the differences between those and which one you think is, I don't know if you want to say better, but might be more conducive to you moving forward in your career? How do you know a postdoc is one or the other? Like, how do you find out whether a postdoc leads to a faculty position or it's a postdoc that, like, after these 2 years, it's kind of over?
Yeah, so the postdoc ad should say that, whether there's a potential. So, there's like one postdoc that I highly recommend is the presidential postdoc. They have them at University of Michigan, UC Berkeley, I think Colorado, I think Maryland. So they have them at a lot of R1s. And those are amazing because they're considered, even though this phrase is kind of passé now, but they're considered sort of like a pipeline program in that you always go into the postdoc with the intention that you will transition into a faculty position, either at that university or another university that is part of the presidential postdoc network. Sometimes they're also called chancellor's postdocs. So that's 2 ways to look for them. The other thing I would say is that if it's not clear in the postdoc, when you do the postdoc interview, there's always that point where they say, do you have any questions? This is where you should ask that question. You should say, I see that the postdoc is advertised as a 2-year postdoc. X university has always been a place that I would really, have considered to build my career at. Are there any options for transitioning to a faculty position? So just broach the topic from the beginning. And if they say, no, there's just no positions, or we don't know, at least they know that that's on your mind. Now, I don't know that there's really a con for that, because if you get there and you do your 2-year postdoc and you want to get out of there, you can leave. Like, you don't have to sign a contract beforehand. So I think always just asking people, what is the likelihood that this could transition into a faculty position, or pursue some that already have that built in. I would say that's how you know.
Yeah. And so you made a transition from your initial postdoc to your second postdoc, right? And so the first postdoc, was that a 1-year postdoc or a 2-year postdoc?
It was supposed to be a 2-year postdoc. And like I said, midway through, I got this offer at Michigan, and I ended my other postdoc early.
Okay.
and started this postdoc.
Can you end your postdoc early, and like, how do you even do that?
You can, and honestly, having had postdocs myself, that's sort of the expectation. So I always offer 2-year postdocs because back in the day when we moved before the pandemic, moving for 1 year, that's a pain. That's a lot of money to move, So I tend to offer 2-year postdocs, and that's also something people should consider is, do I want to move across the country for 1 year? Because when postdocs start, they typically start at the beginning of an academic year or the summer. That coincides with the academic job market at the same time that you're like putting applications out. So almost immediately when you start a postdoc, should be, if you want to pursue a faculty position, should simultaneously be sending out job applications. So, I think anyone who offers a postdoc and wants their postdocs to succeed would understand that as soon as the postdoc gets there, they're also applying for a way to get out because that's the end goal. And so if you get a 2-year postdoc and you're successful in the market your first year, you'll know by January of that first year of the postdoc, and you just let your, advisor know. So yes, it's super common to end. And then, some people decide, I got this 2-year postdoc. I do not want to go on the job market right now because I am so burnt out from my dissertation. So I'm just not even going to apply. I'm just going to start the postdoc and do the postdoc for my whole year and then get on the job market for that second year. So there's flexibility, but it's not uncommon for someone to end a 2-year postdoc early.
Oh, that's great. I didn't even know that at all. Okay, that's great to know.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question before I pass it off to Laura Ann. So you talked about a lot of benefits to pursuing a postdoc. What are some challenges that having a postdoc might present?
I don't know, it was so weird. The first thing I thought was like the Britney Spears, like, not a girl, not yet a woman lyric. That's kind of what I think of postdocs is like, you're not a grad student, but you're not a faculty member. So you're like in this limbo. And so that's just a weird position to be in, that people are like, do I call you doctor? It's like, well, yeah, you got a PhD. So just one is just this weird limbo of like identity crisis. Like, how am I supposed to be acting in academia? What kind of authority do I have? All those kinds of things. I would say another challenge is just that they're typically time limited. From like 1 year to 2 years is typical for like humanities and social sciences. The hard sciences or, natural sciences and stuff, they can be a little bit longer, like I've seen somewhere up to 3 to 5 years, but really 3 years. So that's another thing, it's just like, if you don't have the safety of like, this could be a long-term job. It's like, you always have to be thinking about what's going to be the next thing. So I would say that's a challenge. And I would say the other thing that's a challenge is, especially in those kind of postdocs where you're getting hired to work on a grant project, is how do you balance doing the work that you signed up to do when you accepted the postdoc that's on the grant, and then still furthering your own work. Mm-hmm. So either that means you're finding ways to merge both research ideas so that you have an output that could benefit both the advisor with the grant and your own work, or that means that you negotiate with your advisor to say, I still want to pursue an academic job. So, could I do 60% of my time is working on the grant and like helping you with this grant, and 40% of my time is my own, like working on my own stuff, so like so basically like balancing your forward movement with your responsibilities as a postdoc. That's why I was kind of saying those postdocs were like the presidential postdoc where you get to work on your own project. That's awesome because you don't have that sort of like needing to balance between two things. Or if you find a postdoc that's like very much related to the kind of research you want to pursue, then you can, like I said, sort of like merge the research goals and get something that benefits both of you.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, just so much information in that little time. It's like, oh man, I should have done a postdoc. All right, I'm gonna pass it over to you, Laura Ann.
Thanks. Oh
Oh,
man.
can I just say one thing about that comment you just made? Is that like 2 of the doctoral students who I've been like advising, they just both got faculty offers, but they also got postdoc offers. And so what they did is they asked their faculty offers to postpone for a year so they could do a 1-year postdoc. So that's also a possibility.
Yeah.
FYI.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. At different institutions or this?
Different institutions.
So they asked to defer their assistant or professorship to do a postdoc at a different institution for like a year.
Yeah.
See,
Possibility.
I
Yeah.
didn't know you could do that.
Possibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So wow. Thank you so much. You shared a lot of things I did not know. And a lot of the negotiation of like how you choose and how you like both about like your research interests, your time management, like moving across the country, all that kind of stuff. A term that's come up a lot is advisor or your mentor as a postdoc. And I've been on the job market this year, and so I've had to reach out to a few faculty to ask if they'll sponsor me. And I guess my question is, how do you choose a mentor, like to reach out to? And then also like what role does that mentor or sponsor or advisor play for you as a postdoc? Is it similar to the way that faculty advise their graduate students? How is it different?
Yeah. I'm having a little trouble with the question of like, how do you choose one? And so maybe what I could offer is like from the other end, which is how do I choose the people I'm going to choose as a postdoc, so that way I think it'll still like inform how you choose mentors and how you position yourself. So, you know, I get like whenever I put out a postdoc call, I'll get many offers or like many applications, and the things that I'm looking for is fit, which is it's one of those loaded terms. Like fit can be such a gatekeeping kind of term, but so what I mean by fit personally is, do our research like ideas align in terms of like I'm a qualitative researcher, right? So if you're purely a quant person and you think you can explain the world solely by numbers, like I already know that like we're not going to align in our research. And you know, I might not completely take you off the table, but I'm gonna be, you know, you're not gonna be my first pick. So one is just like alignment between your research area and my research area. Then the second thing I do that I look for that's a very positive trait is, does this person have a clear idea of what they want to do with that postdoc? So sometimes you get people who apply and they just say, it's very generic. Like they're like, I want to be at the University of Michigan, and like they don't say anything about why I would be a good mentor. So you should know what you want to accomplish, and you should know how I would be able to help you, you know? So is it that you want more publications and you've noticed that I publish in the venues you want to get in? You know, is it that you notice I use a particular method and you want more experience and advising around using that method? You know, so that's a really positive thing when people say, our research areas align. I am pursuing a postdoc because I want to accomplish X, Y, and Z. And I think that based on your expertise, you know, you could assist, you could be a good advisor for helping me accomplish X, Y, and Z. So I've seen some postdoc applications where people will literally say, if it's a 2-year postdoc, they'll send me like a timeline that says, I want to get 3 articles out, and this is my timeline for what those articles are going to be. And to me, I'm like, oh, okay, like this person, they have a plan, you know, they have a PhD, so I'm not going to have to be like holding their hand along the whole way. I'll be there to advise them, but they really have a trajectory for themselves. So I would say those are like the 2 major things. You know, do I feel like I actually have the expertise to help, to advise you and mentor you? Like I said, if you're a quant person, I don't have that expertise, so I would probably not be a good advisor. And do you have a plan for how you're going to make the most of your time with the postdoc? Yeah. So, I mean, I think those people that you know, submit like a timeline, those are like the above and beyond, but like those really do stick out. And I think it's a good practice for yourself, you know, because you want to have postdocs are so short. Like, you want to have a plan for yourself, you know, like, what are the major goals you want to get out of it? Is it publications? Is it more presentations? Is it collecting additional data? You know, you should have a plan for yourself. Did that answer your question?
Yes. I think so. Yeah, I think so. You know, because it feels, I know, like when I was doing applications, I was like there are some faculty at some institutions where I was like, I would love to work with this person because, you know, I've read, you know, their articles, and like, I love the way that they write about XYZ. I love like the voice that they use. I love like the vulnerability in their writing. It also aligns with my research. Like, you know, so thinking that articulating those things on my part would help let that faculty member know that I'm not just like, you know, applying willy-nilly, you know, that there's intentionality there for specific support is like, you know, on my end of that is very helpful to hear.
Yeah, definitely some, you know, making the connections, you know, being as specific as possible, I think is very useful in the process.
Cool. Yes, and you know, I think, yeah, you've got quite the experience from being a postdoc to moving into a faculty position to like then being the mentor that we all seek.
Yeah.
You're doing it. I've got a few questions. I feel like you've kind of answered some of the other things that are on this list, which were like, what do you look for when choosing a postdoc? I think you addressed like several different types of things that someone could look for, and then also prioritizing during the fellowship. You mentioned the ongoing job applications, and also advisor support, and like how to prioritize your own research interests or merge them with the projects to really kind of streamline your that experience with your own scholarly identity. So I think I'm good here. I may pass back to Ebony.
So as Laura Ann mentioned, and you mentioned earlier, Pat, that you transitioned from being a postdoc to faculty. So what was that transition like? So when you started your postdoc, was it like, okay, I'm going to do this postdoc for a year or 2 years, and then I'm expected to be a faculty, or was there a review? And then it's like, okay, you're good to go. You use your time well. Now you're faculty. And then like, what did negotiation look like? Did you have to negotiate that beforehand or right before you accepted the faculty position? So like, tell us a little bit about that transition, one, just in terms of, a couple of things. So I'll list them. So the first thing is in terms of negotiating, right? What that faculty position looked like. In terms of like transitioning your research, right? So you go from a postdoc where you may be working on your research, did you continue your research, or were you able to finish and publish during your postdoc, and now you're starting something new? And then like the third thing is just like like you were talking about in terms of like your identity, right? So now you're moving from postdoc now to, you know, you're not in the wishy-washy like, but now you're faculty. So how does that? So now you're going to faculty meetings. Now you need to be on committees. So tell me a little bit about like just how you grappled and balanced that big transition between being a postdoc and faculty member.
Yeah. So in terms of negotiation, we can talk about faculty negotiation, but in the transition period. But I also want to talk a little bit about negotiation for your postdoc when you get it, because I think oftentimes, you know, when you're a grad student, I don't know, maybe I'll just speak from my personal experience. When I was a grad student, we were so underfunded that any nickel and dime people threw at me, I was like, yes, you know, I was like excited and didn't really feel like I had the power to ask for anything. And so when I got my postdoc, you know, I was like, am I supposed to treat this like a faculty offer where you negotiate salary, moving costs, like all that stuff? And the thing someone told me was like, the worst people can say is no, you know? And I was worried because I thought, oh my God, they're gonna think I'm like a diva. They're going to think I'm difficult. They're gonna rescind their offer. Like, I had all of these things in my head. And ultimately I thought, well, those are all risks. They might rescind the offer, in which case I don't even want to work there to begin with. If that something like that, advocating for yourself would lead to that, that's just no. And yeah, I mean, the worst I can say is no. And if they think I'm a diva, like, it's better than being a pushover for me personally. So some things that I negotiated for postdocs was I did ask for some moving costs, and the typical rate is like 10% of your salary. So if the postdoc is, you know, $60,000, you would ask for about $6,000 of moving costs. And I also asked for a 10% salary increase, and I asked for some like conference money, so money to go to conferences to pay for registration and that kind of stuff. And is that everything? And then I negotiated time, and I didn't get all of those things. So, oh, and I negotiated my start date as well. And so they were like, we can't give you, so I didn't get everything, but I put everything on the table. Mm-hmm. And they said, you know, we can't give you 10% more because we have to be in line with what we pay faculty across the university. Some universities just have like a set amount. And they're like, but instead we can put more money, like we'll give you money for conferences and travel, and we'll put what would have been the 10% salary increase into there, you know. So, and okay, so we can't give you this. So that's the thing about negotiation. It's a back and forth, right? So actually, I think the way it went was I said, we can't give you the salary increase because it would be out of alignment with the rest of the postdocs at the university. And then I said, okay, well then could you at least add that money into the travel? So that's how that went. So don't, just because it's no, doesn't mean it's not something else. So anyway, so those are all things that you can negotiate for in terms of a postdoc. And then some postdocs, you're just gonna say no to everything. And that's okay, you know, like you asked, and you know, you're not going to get something you don't ask for. So anyway, okay. So then in terms of becoming a postdoc here at Michigan, so the postdoc that I got was not one of those presidential postdocs. It was not one that came with like a promise of becoming a faculty member, but I knew I wanted to be a faculty member at Michigan. And so when I got offered the postdoc, I actually asked about this secret little area of hiring faculty called targeted opportunity hires. And these are basically jobs that they did not necessarily put a job call out for, they did not necessarily intend to hire in this area, but someone comes along that they think would be a great fit for the university. And so they go up to the provost level or the dean level or whatever, and they say, this person is here and they're amazing, or even if you're not here, this person is somewhere else and they've expressed interest in being here and they're amazing, can we hire them as a targeted opportunity? And so I asked about that. I said, do you all have that, and what is the procedure for like getting that position passed? And if I came here and I did a great job, like could that be a possibility for me? And of course they're like, well, we can't promise anything, blah, blah. But you know, we do have a really great, like, I think I'm saying it right, target of opportunity, it's something like that. It's either opportunity hire or target of opportunity hire. And they said, we do have that, and we have a lot of sort of like leverage in being able to do that. So I was like, great. And so I started my postdoc knowing I'm going to do that. And so what that meant is I met with the dean so that they knew who I was. In my particular school, you can go to faculty meetings as a postdoc, just not the voting meetings. So I would go to faculty meetings. I had coffee hours with faculty. I offered to co-publish with other faculty. Oh, the last thing I forgot to say you can negotiate for that's actually very important, I think is the reason I even got my job, is you can negotiate to be, what do they call it? Like a research investigator. So you have two titles. You have your postdoc, and then you have your research investigator title. And like the postdoc has all the effort, 100% effort. So like all your salary comes there, but then you have like a 0% research investigator. So it's just a title. But what that title does is it allows you to be the principal investigator on grants. So that meant, because when you don't have that, then you're like the PI has to apply, and you're just like, you can never be the PI without that title. And so that was like an important thing that I negotiated when I came to Michigan. I said, I really want to have that. And it was kind of interesting because they had never had a postdoc ask for that before. And they said, well, we don't know, we have to ask HR. And I was like, it's very important to me. And so they were able to do it. And now and I've told every postdoc comes after me. And so now they all have them too. And so what I did is then I had that title and I applied for a grant and I got the grant. And so I had an NSF grant as a postdoc, as the principal investigator. And so when I basically said, I want to transition into a faculty, I said, listen, I'm already kind of doing the job of a faculty. I have a grant. I have doctoral students that I'm paying on the grant. I'm going to faculty meetings. I'm co-publishing with other people. Like, just make me a faculty. And so that's kind of how that went. And so I basically just put all the pieces in a row that I felt I had to basically think, what does a faculty member do? And how can I show my competence in those areas while I'm here? So that when I ask to transition into the faculty, they'll say, oh, she has kind of shown up for A, B, and C, you know, like that's great. And then I forgot what your last question was.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, thank you for that. You know, like you are putting us on, okay? Lifting the veil. Like even though like I've heard about postdocs, like you're telling me things that I still like. I'm going to workshops and things like that, and still I haven't heard. So, oh my gosh, this is great. The other thing is, okay, so you told me about the negotiation. Told me about the transfer responsibilities. You told me about that. Oh man, what was the last thing?
I think it was about the transition of your duties and whether they're different, your identity, like whether you feel your identity changes.
Like in terms of, changing from like a postdoc. So now everybody in that building has seen you as a postdoc, right? Mm-hmm. And so now in a year's time, like you become a postdoc or faculty, you're no longer a postdoc, but you still are, repping with the same people and all those different things. So how do you make that transition, like in terms of like your identity? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I mean, definitely people have known you for a year as a postdoc. And that was a worry that I was like, oh, if I transition into faculty, is everyone going to still not treat me like a postdoc, like it's a bad thing, but there is. I mean, just to be honest with you, like there is a difference between how people will treat you and talk to you as a postdoc versus how they treat you and talk to you as a faculty member in person and through email. Like there's just a difference there. And I was worried, like, are people not going to see me as an equal to them because they knew me before as a postdoc? Mm-hmm. And I think there's a couple of things, you should do, when one is, I don't know, like I've had postdocs who are very sort of like, I don't know if meek is the right word, but they're very much like, I don't know, like when you graduate, you have a PhD, like, yes, you're not a faculty member yet, but you have expertise and you should let that expertise shine and not sort of like be like, oh, well, I'm not yet a faculty member, so I don't really know if I should speak up here. There's obviously a good balance, but anyway, so I think the point is that I really tried to set up when I was a postdoc for people to see me as not necessarily an equal, but, someone with value. So I think from an identity perspective, my transition was like a little bit smoother just because, like I said, I was doing a lot of faculty related things already. But a lot of the freedom you have as a postdoc, I feel like every stage of the process, when you're in it, you think it's the worst. So when you're like a grad student, you're like, oh, this is terrible. I can't wait till I have a faculty position. And then you're like a postdoc and you're like, God, I miss being a grad student, like writing, going to coffee shops, And then you become a faculty member and you're like, oh, I miss being a postdoc where like I could just work on my stuff. And now, so that's kind of where I'm at, where it's just like, man, the postdoc was like such a dream. Like you don't have committees, you don't have service, you're not responsible for student success, you're responsible for your own success. So that transition is not gonna lie, is hard. Yeah. And I'm really happy that I did a postdoc. Like going back, I would not change it. Like I would definitely continue to do a postdoc because honestly, I was not ready to, like, I think if I had taken that faculty position right out of grad school, in my grad school, like my own personal grad school experience, like we didn't teach. So I had no teaching experience. And we TA'd, but it was not like, we didn't really have any teaching responsibilities. And like I said, no one around me, everyone worked in silos. So like I didn't have a lot of experience doing collaborative work. And no one had grants, so I didn't have a lot of experience on like funding my work. Although not all work needs to be funded, but the kinds of things I wanted to do, I knew needed to be funded. And so I think I would have had a very tough like first year. And so I needed the postdoc as a kind of lower stakes in terms of like, it's not counting towards my tenure clock, to figure all those things out.
Yeah.
So highly recommend postdoc if it makes sense for you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I don't know, Laura Ann, if you have any more questions, but that was my final question. I feel like you just gave us so much information. After this, I feel like after someone watches this video, they'll be like, I'm ready to apply for postdocs. I know exactly what to talk about when I'm negotiating. I know exactly where I want to apply. I know who I want to work with. So this was like so informational. Oh my gosh, how amazing that you were able to explain all this stuff like in like 20 minutes. Just like, my mind is blown. So just thank you so much. I appreciate it. And your experience, like you just know the ins and outs. So, oh my gosh, it was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm always looking to help others, succeed. So, and like you said, there's a hidden curriculum. And if you don't have parents who are faculty members or close friends who are faculty members, you don't know what to ask for. And I've seen that happen more and more actually, like when people accept faculty jobs. So like in another episode or in another one-to-one, we can talk about that because that's a whole other world.
Yeah. Oh, we'll be calling you back. Another episode.
Thank you, Pat. Dropping the knowledge.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us for We Need to Name This, a series where we unpack the hidden curriculum of academia. Join us for our next episode, Conquering the Academic Interview, with Dr. Michael Moses II. For more information, visit www.weneedtonamethis.com.